Xbox is on fire.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Friday morning, I eventually checked my phone, and I saw the news that Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond were both leaving Xbox. Phil Spencer was retiring, and Sarah Bond just resigned. Both effective immediately. And in their place was Asha Sharma taking over for Phil. Previously, nobody had ever heard of her before, and that's because she was previously like the AI head at Microsoft and was involved with Instacart, all this stuff. Never anything to do with games. Matt Booty was elevated from his position, which, you know, I do like him. He does know games. That was the big thing, is that I never thought I would see the day that Phil Spencer left. And then once he did leave, though, it was pretty apparent that Sarah Bond was being groomed to be the heir apparent, like that she was going to be the person that would step up in the event that Phil was no longer there, and that didn't happen. Not only that, it was sloppy whenever it happened. There was the retirement, and then Sarah Bond's quickly to follow resignation, which was not addressed by Microsoft. Microsoft released a statement. They didn't mention Sarah Bond, and it was so unprepared. And I'm sure as the weeks unfold, we'll find out exactly all the machinations behind this. But it was so last minute that her social media team, Sarah Bond's social media team, actually put out a survey to gamers looking for feedback for future improvements and things as she went about her job. So this was certainly not planned.
Whoever was the head cheese sitting in the lead chair in that boardroom obviously had the viewpoint of, when we need to change the message, we got to cut the disease out root and stem, with Phil Spencer being root and Bond being stem. So they obviously wanted a complete paradigm shift. I feel it worries me what Asha's specialties are. AI and Instacart, both of those scream, let's fantasize about new ways to take people's money.
Well, I mean, we already know Microsoft has been investing billions in AI to begin with. So this is kind of what we all feared was coming, was going to be a push towards AI in video games, like a predatory and unethical use of AI in video games. And her appointment does nothing to, belay those fears.
And I was a big Microsoft guy during the original OG Xbox and the Xbox 360. Most people were.
360 absolutely dominated.
I mean, that was a god console, dude. It was a great console. Back then, we had Major Nelson lighting it up with the great weekly stuff that he did for Xbox Live. And Xbox Live at the time still is the most stable online environment. And they had decent exclusives, although I've never been a huge fan, not because I don't like that other systems don't get it. I don't care so much about exclusives. I mean, I loved Gears of War and I love Forza Motorsport.
So that actually kind of plays into the larger story. So I will say, you mentioning Xbox 360, obviously that is one of the all-timer legendary top tier console releases. And that was when it's hard for people to understand it now, especially younger people that may have never played an Xbox 360, for them to envision a time when Xbox was not only number one, they were number one with a bullet. They were number one by a long shot. And unfortunately, the 360 was not only legendary, but it was also the arbiter of Xbox's eventual demise, because with its enormous success, like often comes, success breeds complacency. And they sat on their laurels. They just thought about, hey, what can we do without games, blah, blah, blah. And that's how we got the Xbox One and the presentation with the Kinect and what it can do for
I got tricked
TV.
Into that thing.
I had it too, but what it could do for TV. And we had Don Matrick, right? And from that point, that show, that announcement, that was where Xbox really started to die. And eventually they got rid of Don Matrick. Phil got elevated. We all love Phil. He's Uncle Phil, right? I think Phil was great. And he was given a really rough hand. He loved games. He loved the company. But he was handed a system that everybody hated, a brand in decline, and he tried his best to elevate it back to where it was. But he also had these constant wars with Satya Nadella, who one of the things that we'll say, Satya Nadella, this whole thing as far as, so you mentioned exclusives, the whole thing about exclusives, not exclusives, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, hated exclusives, hated exclusivity. He didn't want it, didn't believe in it. Phil, on the other hand, realized the value of exclusivity. If we didn't have Halo as an exclusive for the original Xbox, if we didn't have all these things, the value proposition for Xbox is greatly less. One of the great value propositions for PlayStation right now is all of the great exclusives that they have, especially these one-player exclusives, these single-player exclusives. That's a big part of the value proposition. And so we come to a point now where there is this internal butting of heads, which obviously Satya Nadella won, and it was also the result of a lot of their mixed messaging. Basically, everything's going everywhere. It's not just, oh, we have these console exclusives, but we're putting them on PC as well. They're going to PlayStation. They're going here. They're going everywhere. And I think that was a big. That was when Xbox died. That was the mace blow to the back of Xbox's head, and its fingers felt like wood. Was when they just said everything everywhere. And to that end, Sarah Bond.
Look at you being all cool with your Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yes, we'll talk about. I wondered if it was going to hit.
Now he wants to talk about it.
So Sarah Bond was the architect of the "This is an Xbox" campaign, and I think we can all agree that "This is an Xbox" campaign was, I mean, that was just pushing it even further into the grave, because the whole point of it was, hey, we are Xbox, but you don't need to buy an Xbox to play an Xbox.
Not helping.
Yes.
This is an Xbox. It sounds like Oprah. You get an Xbox. You get an Xbox.
How does that promote your brand if it's like, hey, you can play Xbox games anywhere? Okay, then why do I need an Xbox? Why would I want an Xbox? And so anyway, with this whole thing, Phil steps down, says he's retiring. Sarah Bond just straight up resigns. Isn't mentioned by Microsoft on the day of or anything like that. She just ghosts. But a lot of people, apparently there are reports coming out that a lot of people said that Sarah was difficult to work with. I obviously never worked with her, so I can't tell you. I can't. But there's a lot of, like, one guy, I believe, was it Tom Warren, that put out a story where he confirmed this with 12 sources, all of whom were like, yeah, she was difficult to work with. Apparently, there are some within Xbox that are relieved that she is gone. And in fact, on Monday, when Phil Spencer got his big send-off, there was Phil Spencer and Asha Sharma and Matt Booty. Nowhere to be seen was Sarah Bond for Phil Spencer's send-off. So it seems like it was abrupt, and that she was kind of persona non grata.
And I can see that with any company, no matter what their product is. When you get that high up, you're going to create enemies regardless. And, she's probably driving down the I-5 out of Richmond and probably upset while this whole send-off was going on. I imagine she's still got a decent golden parachute, and it's not like she's not going to have a hard time finding her legs somewhere else. It might not even be in gaming.
I suspect that it will. I did. One of the things that people were
probably
saying,
Ubisoft.
One of the things that people were saying behind the scenes apparently was, she was difficult to work with. However, she was fantastic at building relationships and securing agreements with studios and other companies and things like that. So she's probably got some pretty solid relationships with outside of that. So it wouldn't surprise me if she was to pop up with somebody like an Ubisoft or something like that. The big question now, though, is where does this leave Xbox? Because now that Asha Sharma has been elevated to this position, one of the things that she had mentioned, like, there was this email out to the employees of Xbox, and that's made its way out into the public, which obviously they expect. They expect, like, oh, when we send this out, it's written also for public consumption because they know there will be leaks. But basically, they are promising a renewed focus on consoles.
Real quick, first you asked where Xbox is going, and I'm just going to say this. There's PlayStation, and then there's PC, and then there's the non-concentric circles of Dante's Inferno, and then there's the Nintendo Switch, then Xbox, dude. That is a mountain to climb to get where they need to be. And a renewed focus, I don't feel like that should be their footprint anymore. I feel like this is a lot like Sega. Sega decided, you know what, we're just going to make games. And I feel like Microsoft should probably just do that. Maybe keep
So-
their architecture, keep Game Pass and keep that alive like Steam did and has done and is doing wonderfully at. And then just give us the framework. We don't need a console.
I have mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I think it would be good to refocus on consoles. I think you do need a console, especially if you have something like Game Pass. I think if you don't have a console, the value proposition from Game Pass is less, because right now you can only really utilize Game Pass if you have a PC or an Xbox. You can also play on smart TVs or whatever and do that kind of thing for those that, for the ones that it allows for the cloud play and all that. But
Yeah.
for console players, you can't get Game Pass on PlayStation or Game Pass on Switch. So I think that
Not yet.
not yet. I think that having a console would be good, and it would help add value and keep Game Pass alive, because that is one of their things that they are doing well with. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that they've supposedly one of the reasons that they have taken this route with Xbox, cleaned the slate and started over and changed their focuses and trying to figure things out, is because it's one of the few profitable consumer-facing products that they have. Obviously, they have Office and all that stuff, and that's
Yeah.
business. That's always going to be there. That's always going to make them money. But they don't have a lot of profitable consumer-facing products, and Xbox
Correct.
was one of those. And so they're really wanting to dive back in. Now, my concern with that is we are, in all likelihood, nearing the end of this console generation. All signs are currently pointing to around 2028 to be the end of this console period. So if they have already been at work on a console, but with the mindset of we don't need a console, it's just going to have a console because we need to have a console there, but we're just going to try to promote this is an Xbox campaign. If they just do a hard pivot now and they're like, no, we are all in on consoles, you built this console to be a throwaway afterthought. So how do you take the years of development that you've already put into this box that you seemingly didn't care all that much about, and now you're going to focus it on, hey, our brand is riding on the back of the Wii U, I don't know. I'm scared that, like, even if they wanted to do this pivot, I don't know if they've done enough hard work on the console up to this point to allow that pivot at the time that console needs to release. I also worry about the CEO, not only because of the AI background and this obvious focus of, hey, it's very clear that she's in this position because of AI, and she's
The
even said, like,
Instacart's what worries me.
well, and she said like, I have a zero tolerance for bad AI and this and that. So no swearing off of like, oh no, we're not going to do it, guys. It's just like, we're not going to do it bad, like communism. We're going to do it the right way this time. Like, no. So here's my question and my concern with this, because I think this differs from a lot of other places. So if you were
Yeah.
to go from something like Instacart to, I don't know, Netflix, I think, okay, maybe, because some people
That's not a bad
say,
move.
well, business leadership is a transferable skill. And I say, to a degree, to a point, that is true. So if she was at Instacart and she went to Netflix, okay, these things both operate primarily off of apps. You are
Yep.
delivering a service to a customer, and you're just trying to play within the margins, get people paid while still making money yourself, and balancing these things. Like, there are things that you
Increase
can
first-time
transfer there.
users. Yeah.
Yeah, there's ways to make that work. Or something like if you were working somewhere else and then you took over as CEO of Taco Bell, right? You don't need to be a chef. You don't have to enjoy Mexican. I mean, it's not even Mexican food, let's be honest. But,
Yeah.
there's certain things. However, when we're talking video games, especially Xbox, where we're trying to dig out of a hole, I feel like you do need to be aware of the products that you're making, especially because the thing that put Xbox in the hole that it's in is lack of games, or the games that they do release are lackluster. So
Yeah.
we release limited games. The games we do release are lackluster. 19 out of 20 games we release suck. Despite spending billions acquiring Activision and Bethesda and
Bethesda.
all these things, and still we can't. We bought tons of successful companies and we still generate crap. So you need to be able to identify what is a good game, what is not a good game. So I don't know. I understand the people that say, yeah, business leadership is a transferable skill, but I think in this situation, you need to be acutely aware. You don't have to be a hardcore gamer, but you need to at least be able to identify what your players want and be able to look at a game that the players are not allowed to see yet and determine whether it's ready, good, if it should still have money invested in it, or what. Otherwise, this is Kathleen Kennedy with Star Wars. You need to know your audience and you need to know what works and what doesn't.
This is one of those positions where I think the person coming in needs to understand that platform and where they come from. So they need to find somebody, I don't want to say necessarily in-house, but Microsoft has a lot of commissioned work people that don't actually work for the company, but they need to find somebody that is familiar with the struggles they've had, that also has a sound plan to repair it.
So and Matt Booty thankfully is the guy that has the knowledge of games. So I'm glad that he is there. Honestly, like I mentioned that Phil Spencer was handed a shit hand, and he did the best that he could with that and butting heads with Satya Nadella. I know that he meant well, and there's some decisions he made that I loved. There's some decisions he made that I hated, but I always knew his heart was in the right place. All that said, I do think that Xbox did need new leadership. It's just a matter of, is this the right person? And kind of more on that line, looking back at Phil Spencer's tenure, they closed more studios than they released games. And was it 2024 that was the thing where they closed more studios?
24,
than they released games. This is a problem. And I wonder what it is. Like, so you have all of these very talented studios making games, and I have to wonder if there's like what the problem was. Because I refuse to believe that it was just like, oh, well, they just all made bad games. They were just all games that were lost causes. Yeah. I can't accept that. That just doesn't seem accurate. So either somebody at the top on Xbox's level was not communicating well enough to the studio to get what was needed across, or to crack the whip enough, or maybe they just weren't funding the games enough, or their expectations were not set correctly. I don't know. What do you think could have possibly been the problem? Because there's no way that there were just that many unsalvageable games.
It's systemic. But one thing I loved about Phil Spencer is how passionate the guy was towards other gamers, and how he was less about, I'm in a war with Sony, and more about, how can we work together just to make games better for everybody? I really feel like he was that driving force behind, let's share some of these exclusives. He was one of those guys. And the funny thing was, all the background complaints back then were that, yeah, Microsoft's willing to do it, but Sony's the one that's holding back.
There's some sort of lack of focus that, like you say, is systemic. Like that, there's all of these studios that they've acquired or brought up from nothing, or started by planting someone from another studio, and nobody can get a decent game. It doesn't make any sense. So I have to believe that there's something that Xbox was either not doing, or I think probably even more likely doing, that was making it more difficult to produce a good game. Whether it was overly critiquing something, like whenever you see producers get their fingers in movies and like, oh, people love cats, so we need a cat character, or that, something like that, where they're touching it too much, or they're not touching it enough. I don't know, but something is clearly going wrong.
And I'm just going to say this too. I feel like there's too many idealists with the old regime at Microsoft, or at Xbox, not at Microsoft, and not enough realists in the room. Because one of the points you brought up that is excellent, and you've actually brought it up before, if you'll remember, but when you have dreamers, they're able to give you that dream and give you that foundation, but you need the realist to finish it, to get you to the finish line. Dreaming can only get you, and idealism can only get you so far, man. And to your point, I feel like a lot of their games they went so far and just didn't make it for some reason. Didn't make it out of the gate. Bad launch. not optimized for the system that it was on. So many different things.
I mean,
that
how many
went wrong
games
with
was
a
it that
lot of their
they
big titles.
announced, previewed, and then
Ugh.
we just never saw? Just got canceled.
They talked about Fable like 6-7 years ago.
I thought Fable was
Phil
going to be
Spencer-
canceled.
Yeah, Phil Spencer did a big. He was the one that he was like, "We're bringing Fable back," and then I was like, "Okay."
Now, thank God, Fable, from what we've seen so far, now that just
Oh my God,
few
that
weeks
looks
ago, looks
fantastic.
great. But up until that, I was convinced Fable was canceled and they just hadn't announced it yet because it was
Yeah, that
a
was fantastic.
long time. I guess to wrap up the Xbox conversation, my question to you, just to put a bow on everything, is what do you think this means for Xbox and where are they going?
Well, I'm a naturally optimistic person. I try to find the good in everything and everybody, but I got to tell you, it's hard to be optimistic about Xbox right now. This new CEO is going to have to show me something because I don't like her background and I don't think she's going to do what she says she's going to do. I feel like part of it's there. She's just there to shut it down. I feel like the PS5 and the PC and the Switch has already left the station and Microsoft's just waiting for a ticket and they're not going to get it, man.
I have no optimism right now for Xbox. I feel like this is the death rattle. Like I said, I think they are dead men walking. They're dead and they don't even know it yet. I think they died whenever they agreed to do this, put their games over on PlayStation, because all of a sudden you can play Xbox games without an Xbox on console. So Xbox is meaningless. And, I think they've also done so many other things to shoot themselves in the foot, announcing more expensive games before walking it back. And then just all this mixed messaging, mixed signals. And, I think, like we've said, it is possible that somebody that has no knowledge of the product could bring a positive aspect to Xbox or any product. Theoretically, that is possible. However, if that was their interpretation, one thing that they should not have done was to create her gamer tag. Her gamer tag has existed for about a month now, I believe, and then they juiced it with all of these hard to achieve achievements, and that she clearly didn't earn herself. So they created her gamer
that
tag.
pisses me off right now. Yeah.
And so it's like, if you thought you're just like, hey, we know what we need: new leadership, new ideas. Okay, well then quit trying to pass them off as a gamer. Sell us one or the other. Sell us that she's a gamer and she is in here before the players, or sell us that she is a savvy businesswoman and we need her in here to turn a corner and make it profitable again. It's something that, don't try to tell us one and show us the other. So I do not have any optimism for Xbox right now. I think it was dead whenever they went cross-platform, and I think that they are struggling to get their helmet off right now. And if they do make it, if they do find another golden age or any success, I believe that success will be because of Matt Booty, and he will be heralded as a hero in his new position, because he was the one that was running Mojang after Microsoft acquired Mojang. He was running that. He's done a lot of good things within the company. So if it does come back, I believe it will be Matt Booty as the MVP, but I do not expect that comeback to happen.